Okay, let's talk about basic algebra equations. And you can see down here, I say for people that are not good in math. So if you think you're not good in math, well, I must tell you that you're incorrect. You absolutely can be great in math. So, if you have this belief that you're not good in math, we got to fix that up. Okay, so if you stick with me for a few minutes, you're going to be able to see that you can understand these basic equations, which is kind of the beginning of algebra. And we're going to even talk about the fact that you were doing basic equations way back in the second or third grade. You might be surprised that you were doing algebra that early, but in fact you were. So we're going to be talking about equations kind of like this. And we're going to do a few examples so you can have a real good sense of how to solve basic algebra equations. Of course, this is just the start, and there's a lot more to learn, but let's just go ahead and focus on the basics for this particular equation. Now, if you're new to my YouTube channel, let me go ahead and introduce myself. My name is John. I'm the founder of TabletClass Math. I'm also a middle and high school math teacher, and over several years, I've constructed what I like to believe is one of the best online math help programs there is. Of course, I'll let you be the judge of that. If you're interested, you can check out my math help program by following the link in the description of this video. But basically, I have 100 plus different courses ranging from pre-algebra, algebra 1, geometry, algebra 2, pre-calculus, and I have tons of test prep courses. So if you're studying for a certain type of test, whether that be the SAT, ACT, GED, etc., I can help you out. And I also do a lot with homeschooling. So if you homeschool, I have a great homeschool learning program. By the way, I've kind of shortened up my introduction to previous videos I've done, but I do want to mention that I do offer math notes. So note taking is critical to your math success. So if you're not taking notes as a student, you got to improve that, and you can use my notes to study from as you improve. You can find the links to all this stuff in the description of this video. All right, let's get into basic equations. Now, if you think back, way back in the good old days when it was like first grade, second grade, third grade, I'm not even sure when I was studying this. I know it was definitely in the 1970s, and it was awesome going to elementary school in the 1970s. I do remember my first grade teacher because she was smoking outside the classroom, and I think that, us young kids were probably giving her a tough time. But I do remember doing problems like this. Okay, now let's go ahead and take a look at this problem and recall back when you were in elementary school, you would do a problem like this, right? You'd be, okay, what number do I have to plug in here to make this true? So your young brain would be like, what do I do? Do I put in a 1? Well, if you put in a 1, that would be 1 plus 3, that's 4. That's not going to be 5. And so you kind of just did a little trial and error, but most of you probably recognize, oh, I need to put in a 2. 2 plus 3 is 5, and that would be the right answer. Then you get a bunch of stars and happy faces and all that kind of good stuff. That was a lot of good fun back in elementary school, but in fact, this is algebra, okay? What we're doing with basic equations is solving for an unknown value. Now, this right here is a symbol that represents an unknown value, but here's another symbol that represents an unknown value. I can say x plus 3 is equal to 5. Okay, so x is a variable. It represents an unknown value. But this box right here also represents an unknown value. But for some reason, we were okay with this in like the second grade or whatever the case is. But as soon as we see something like that, most people, that don't think they're good at math start, freaking out. Oh, no, this is algebra. No, it's scary. No, 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 that's not. It's the same thing. Okay. And basically, we just need to know the rules, all right? And you can't learn something like algebra. You don't get like gigantic, kind of like a packet, like an encyclopedia. Here is all of algebra. Jump in and start learning everything. It doesn't work that way. Okay, you have to start kind of biting in one little skill set at a time and build yourself up. Okay, so that's what we're going to be talking about. And the rest of this video is just basic equations. So let's get right to it. And let's focus on these here. These are going to be one-step equations, and we're going to do this guy down here in a second. And we're going to do a couple other problems. All right, let me scoot this guy down so we can focus on these two problems. Now, if you think you can actually solve these problems, you want to just challenge yourself real quick, go and pause the video and knock these out. But what I'm interested in is not so much Well, of course, I'm interested in you having the correct answer, but it's really the process that you're taking in your understanding of basic equations. So let's go ahead and just review some real fundamental things about equations. First of all, in algebra, an equation, you want to think of it as like a seesaw or teeter-totter. It all depends. I don't know. Some of you call it a seesaw, some of you call it a teeter-totter. Some of you don't even know what I'm talking about because maybe they don't even have these things anymore, but you know how it goes. You jump on one side and your friend will be over here and you'll be doing all this kind of good stuff like that. But this is basically like a balance, like a fulcrum, okay, a balance scale. And what we have in equations is the left is equal to the right, okay? Now, if I have something that's imbalanced, okay, let's kind of imagine something here. Let's say I have 10 pounds over here and I have 10 pounds over there, and the scale is nice and balanced. Now, if I add 2 pounds on this side of the scale, what happens? It's going to tip this way, right? It's all of a sudden heavier. I got 10 plus 2, so this is no longer equal to 10, okay? But how can I fix this situation up? Well, I could do one of two things. I can remove the 2 or I can add 2, okay? So here's one of the fundamental concepts of algebra is the following. Remember, we started off with this original kind of balance, 10 equals 10. But if I add 2 to one side of the equation, that's going to mess up the equation. So to keep things in balance, as long as I do whatever I did to this side, I also do it to this side, then I'm keeping the equation in balance. And if you think about, keeping, your algebra equations as you're doing things in balance, then you're going to be fine because effectively, you can do pretty much whatever you want when you're solving an equation in algebra, but you have to do things equally to both sides of the equation, okay? So you want to keep that in mind as we kind of go through these steps. So let's go ahead and start in on these equations. Now, by the way, we're just doing one-step equations in this video, all right? One step. And then after you master one step, then you would want to master two-step and then multi-step equations. Of course, I have videos on all this stuff in my YouTube channel. Hopefully you'll like and subscribe to my channel by the end of this video. But let's continue to learn basic equations. All right, so here we have x plus 2 is equal to 7. Again, you can think of this as box plus 2 is equal to 7. So in your mind, you might think, oh, is that 5? 5 plus 2 is equal to 7? Yes, the answer is going to be 5, but we want to use algebra, okay, kind of the correct process here to solve this. So when we're solving a basic equation in algebra, what I want is x is equal to the number, okay? It's basically telling me the number that needs to go inside that box, all right? So what does x need to be equal to make this true? Well, that is kind of the name of the game. We're trying to solve this equation, okay? We're trying to determine what value of x is needed to make this statement true. So again, to solve it, I want to have only x on this side and then one number over here. And this, if we did this correct, would be our solution. All right, so how can we do this? Well, I have x plus 2. The goal is just to have x. So I'm like, I got x plus 2. I'd like to remove this 2. I'd like to take it off the scale, if you will. So how can I remove this 2 from this side? Well, I can just subtract 2. Okay, that would certainly remove that 2. I'm like, okay, 2, let's get you out of there. But again, remember, in algebra, whatever I do to one side of the equation, I have to do it equally to the other side. So I have to subtract 2 from both sides of the equation. So when we're studying algebra, you want to use kind of a column format like this. Then we put a little line like so. There's a couple other formats that you can use, but I want to encourage you to stick with what I'm teaching you here if you're really serious about mastering algebra. Okay, so let's take a look at what I did, all right? I'm subtracting 2 from this side of the equation. Why? Because I want to get an x by itself, okay, right here on the left-hand side. So I'm going to subtract this 2, but I have to do it to both sides of the equation. Now, once you've done it just like this, put a little line, you're going to kind of add down in a column manner. So x plus nothing is x, plus 2 minus 2 is 0. I don't need to write a 0 because that just kind of goes away, which I wanted to. That was what my goal was. Now I have 7 plus a negative 2, or 7 minus 2, that is 5. Okay, so I have this x is equal to 5, and certainly we could just write it as x is equal to 5, and that is the solution. Of course, we knew that because if we were thought of this as the box, right, what number goes in here to make this true, it would be 5. All right, so like anything, okay, to understand how to solve a ton of different equations, you have to first understand how to solve one equation and really understand the concepts behind it. So if this makes sense to you, that's excellent. And if you were able to do it just like this, then I must give you a little happy face. Nice job. All right, so let's go ahead and apply what we learned with this one-step equation. So we have y minus 3 is equal to 12. Of course, I'm using a different variable. In algebra, you can use all kinds of symbols. Typically, we use little letters like A, B, X, Y, but you can have all kinds of crazy symbols that represent numbers or variables. Some of these might look familiar. That's like pi, that represents a number, e, that represents another number. So, don't get fixated on only, equations have to have this x. It can be any variable. All right, so we have y minus 3 is equal to 12. Again, what's the objective? I want to get y by itself, okay? So how can I get y by itself? I got y minus 3. I'm like, I don't want y minus 3. I want y, only y. So how can I get rid of that minus 3? All right, well, let's just look at what I did here. Okay, if I had a plus 2, I subtracted 2. If I have a minus 3, how about maybe we add 3 to that minus 3? That'll certainly get rid of that 3 here, and I can add it to both sides of the equation just like so. Okay, so if this is making sense, that's excellent. Then we're going to add down in a column manner. I get y plus nothing is y. Minus 3 plus a positive 3, or negative 3 plus 3 is 0. And then I have 12 plus 3 is 15, so y is equal to 15. All right, so how are you feeling? Okay, you're starting to warm up to this. Hopefully, your brain is saying, you know what, maybe, instead of not being not good at math, maybe you are good. I'm telling you right now, you can be great at math. It's just, you got to take things one step at a time, all right? And my goal with everything I do is to try to teach math in a clear and understandable way. And hopefully I'm succeeding if you're understanding. All right, so let's take a look at the next type of one-step equation that we're going to be dealing with. And this is multiplication. So in algebra, I have 5t is equal to 20. If I have 5x, this means 5 times x. Now, why, some of you might be saying, well, why don't we just write like 5 times x, like 3 times 7? So maybe you can answer that question by just looking here. Imagine if I said 5 times x, I have like x here, that would be completely confusing. So in algebra, we don't use that notation. Okay, now some of you might be saying, well, what about this? 5 times x. Well, this is a multiplication operator, but we really don't use that much as well. This is kind of the primary. Well, I take that back. You might see the dot, like if I go x times x times x, this would be okay, but x is also x times itself 3 times, okay? But the most important thing here is to know that this means 5 times x in algebra, all right? So this is 5 times t is equal to 20. So let's go back to our second grade, third grade, whatever that case is. Let's say 5 box is equal to 20. So mentally, actually, we would probably look a little bit more like this back in those days. 5 times a something is equal to 20. So what do we have to put into this little box to make this true? You guessed it, it is 4, right? And you just, 5 times 1, that doesn't work. 5 times 2, 5 times 4 is 20 because you know your times table, etc. All right, but the thing here is that the goal, just like these previous two equations, is still the same. The goal is to get t by itself with one number. That is going to be the solution. But I have 5 times t, but I want t. So how can I, fix this up? Well, what I really want, t, right here, is really 1t. Okay, when I write x, it's the same thing as 1x. Now, we don't write 1x. Like if I write a y, I don't necessarily write a 1y, but that's what it stands for. That's what's in front of that y is a 1. So here I have 5t. I really want a 1t, which is effectively t. Okay, so how can I fix this up? Well, how about using this trick? If I have 5 times t, let's just divide this thing by 5, because 5 divided by 5 is 1. So that's the little trick I'm going to use here. So that'll give me a 1t. Okay, but again, in algebra, whatever I do to one side of the equation, I have to do to the other. side equally. So I'm going to divide this side by 5 and this side by 5. So I got 20 divided by 4. So I have 1t is equal to 4, or t is equal to 4, and that is the solution. All right, so hopefully you start to pick up on this, okay? You know, you're taking, these one steps are critical because when you have a big equation in algebra, really what you're going to be doing is whittling it down by a series of steps until you get to a one-step equation, which we're working on right now. And already you've learned 3 types. There's one more type, and this one is a little bit more confusing. Well, hopefully this isn't confusing at all, but sometimes this could be a little confusing to students. But don't worry, I'm going to fix you up here in just 1 second if you've been confused with these basic algebra equations. All right, so how about something like this? 2/3 W is equal to 4. So I'm going to scoot this guy over, and let's take a look at something like this. How about W over 3 is equal to 4? So this is division. Okay, so we've done multiplication, we've done addition, we've done subtraction. So this might be confusing, like, well, what do I do? I have division, all right? Let's just go back up here real quick. I want to show you something that I want to stress that's important. So when we saw an addition sign, we used subtraction to undo that. Okay, when I saw subtraction, I used addition. All right, now when we had multiplication, we used division. So now I see division. This is division, right? W divided by 5. This is division. What do you think we're going to use? What operator we're going to use to fix this up? If you're saying multiplication, well, then you're on the right track. That's exactly what we're going to do. So let's talk about how we do this. So this is W divided by 3. The easiest way to handle equations like this, where there's a division sign in algebra, is just to multiply. So again, my goal is to get a W by itself. So if I have a W divided by 3, what if I just multiply this by 3? Now you got to know a little bit about fractions, because 3 times, this is really 1 over 3. So if I have 3 times 1/3, okay, if you can understand that or see that. Now, you do need to know basic fractions for sure when you're dealing with algebra, but 3 times 1/3 is going to be, 1, not 3, okay? So again, I'm looking for whatever step I need to take in order to get a W or a 1W. So if I have divided by 3, if I multiply by 3, I get 3 over 3. Okay, so let's just go actually show that. So I would get 3W over 3, and then 3 divided by 3 will give me 1W or W. Okay, so here, what did I do? I had 1 over 3. I'm multiplying by 3, so I got to multiply this side, of course, by 3. So that is going to be 12. So I have 1W is equal to 12, or W is equal to 12. So that's how you deal with these last type of one-step equations. So let's go ahead and practice this with this guy. Okay. So how can I solve for W? How can I get W by itself? Well, the trick is, if you have this fraction right there, okay, you might be saying, well, I want to multiply. Yes, you have to multiply because this is kind of division. But when you see a fraction, we call this, by the way, a coefficient, the number in front of the variable. Just flip it upside down, okay, it's 3 over 2, and multiply. All right, so you do have to kind of remember that. And but again, if I multiply this side of the equation by what we call the reciprocal, I gotta have to do the same thing over here. Okay, so 3/2 times 2/3. This is going to be equal to 6 over 6, because I multiply across, right? Of course, you got to know some basic fractions. 6 over 6 is 1, so this is 1W or W. And then I have 4 times 3/2, so that's 4 over 1. Anytime you see a number, you can always write it over 1 to see that as a fraction. And of course, this will be 12 over 2, because I'm multiplying across. 12 over 2, and that is 6. So our final answer here will be W is equal to 6. So you can see these equations that involve these a little bit of these fractions, okay, kind of like this or this, they might be a little bit more involved. But if you understood everything that I went over, then you understand one-step equations, okay? And ultimately, all your Linear equations in algebra are going to distill down to a one-step equation, and as long as you can handle these four situations, you're going to be good to go. Okay, so hopefully some of you out there, they're saying, I'm not good at math. We need to get rid of this. Okay, everyone can be uh, great in math, but it takes work and it takes time, and you're going to have to be committed to learning the subject. All right, and if you're like, well, I tried it a little bit, but I failed, forget the past. The past is the past. What you need to find is a teacher that can teach in a clear and understandable way and really breaks things down. That is my goal. Okay. And if you like the way I teach, hopefully you'll consider subscribing to my channel. I've been on YouTube for 10 plus years, have over 1,000 plus videos, basic to advanced mathematics, all there for you. Of course, my best math help will be within my math help system. But anyways, I definitely want to thank you for spending a little time with me today to learn some mathematics. And by the way, don't forget to smash that like button. That helps me out as well. All right, so with that being said, I definitely wish you all the best in your mathematics adventures. Thank you for your time and have a great day.